Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
I feel the force.
Okay, first story tonight is from South Dakota. A proposed measure legalizing medical cannabis access in South Dakota is qualified for the 2020 ballot next November. The South Dakota Secretary of State's office acknowledged Thursday that petitioners had gathered a sufficient number of signatures to place Measure 26 on the South Dakota ballot. The initiative permits qualified patients to possess and home cultivate cannabis for medical purposes and establishes a state-regulated retail system for medical marijuana sales. Melissa Mintel, director of New Approach South Dakota and sponsor of the medical marijuana ballot initiative, said, quote, "For many years we've asked the legislature to address the issue of medical marijuana, despite the fact that a strong majority of South Dakotans support allowing legal, regulated, and safe access to medical marijuana for patients with debilitating conditions. South Dakota's elected officials have failed to take action. Patients cannot afford to wait any longer, and this ballot initiative is our only recourse," end quote. South Dakota is one of only 3 states that has not enacted any legislation providing some form of medical cannabis or CBD access. A separate ballot measure that seeks to regulate the use and sale of marijuana for all adults still awaits certification from the South Dakota Secretary of State. Earlier this week, New Jersey lawmakers decided to place an adult use legalization question on the 2020 ballot as well. Additional information about the South Dakota initiatives is available from the website South Dakotans for Better Marijuana Laws. And out of Trenton, New Jersey, supermajorities of the New Jersey Assembly and Senate decided on Monday to place a marijuana legalization ballot question before voters this November. Commenting on the legislative action, Garden State NORML Executive Director Charlena McKeithen said, quote, "We support any move beyond prohibition. Now marijuana consumers and anyone who supports reform can cast a vote for freedom," end quote. The question will appear as a constitutional amendment on the November election ballot. New Jersey senators voted 24-16 in favor of the effort, while members of the Assembly voted 49-24. State law requires that 3/5 of lawmakers in both chambers approve a resolution to place an amendment on the ballot. The ballot question will read, quote, "Do you approve amending the Constitution to legalize a controlled form of marijuana called cannabis? Only adults at least 21 years of age could use cannabis. The state commission created to oversee the state's medical cannabis program would also oversee the new personal use cannabis market. Cannabis products would be subject to the state sales tax. If authorized by the legislature, a municipality may pass a local ordinance to charge a local tax on cannabis products," end quote. Democratic Governor Phil Murphy had previously backed a legislative effort to regulate the personal use and retail sale of cannabis, but the proposed measure never received a Senate vote. NORML's Northeast political assistant Tyler McFadden said that the expeditious legislative action would have been preferable, but expressed confidence that, quote, "New Jersey voters will overwhelmingly support the legalization of cannabis in the Garden State," end quote, in 2020. According to a statewide Monmouth University poll, 62% of New Jersey adults support legalizing the possession of small amounts of marijuana for personal use. If voters approve the amendment in 2020, lawmakers will still have to finalize its language prior to implementing the new law. Our next story is out of Washington, D.C. Over 6 in 10 U.S. adults support legalizing marijuana nationwide, according to a pair of public opinion polls released this week. According to a new Fox News survey of registered voters nationwide, 63% of respondents endorse, quote, "legalizing the recreational use of marijuana on a national level," end quote. The total represents an increase in public support of 4 percentage points since the last time Fox polled on the issue in 2018. A second national poll conducted by NPR, PBS, and the Marist Institute for Public Opinion reported that 62% of U.S. adults believe that legalizing marijuana nationally is a good idea. The poll results are consistent with other recent national surveys, including those conducted by Gallup, the Public Religion Research Institute, Pew, and Axios, all showing greater than 60% public support in favor of legalizing cannabis. This holiday season, Americans are more likely than ever to agree in favor of legalizing marijuana when the topic comes up at the dinner table. With a public majority mandate, now is our time to demand an end to prohibition in advance of the 2020 elections. Our next story is from Japan. The daily administration of CBD reduces symptoms of social anxiety disorder in teens, according to clinical trial data published in the journal Frontiers in Psychology. A Japanese investigator assessed the efficacy of CBD versus placebo in 26 teenagers between the ages of 18 and 19, and with SAD in a randomized trial. Subjects consumed 300 milligrams of CBD daily for a period of 4 weeks. The authors reported that CBD dosing was associated with a significant decrease in the subject's anxiety. None of the participants expressed any significant health complaints as a result of the treatment. The author concluded, quote, "In all, the results of the current study provide evidence for anxiolytic effects of repeated CBD administration in teenagers with SAD. The results indicate that CBD could be a useful option to treat social anxiety." End quote. The full text of the study, Anxiolytic Effects of Repeated Cannabidiol Treatment in Teenagers with Social Anxiety Disorder, appears in this month's edition of Frontiers in Psychology. Our next story is from Nashville, Tennessee. The enactment of statewide cannabis access laws is associated with a reduction in opioid prescriptions, according to data published in the Journal of Health Economics. This is probably about the dozenth time we've covered this issue from different universities just in the past year, that cannabis users, medical marijuana cannabis users, dramatically decrease their use of opioids and other pharmaceuticals. A team of researchers from Vanderbilt University in Tennessee and the University of Alabama School of Law analyzed a data set of over 1.5 billion, that's billion with a B, individual opioid prescriptions, which represents approximately 90% of all prescription opioids filled by outpatient pharmacies over the time period of 2011 till 2018. They reported that cannabis access laws were associated with significantly lower rates of opioid prescriptions and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, or NSAIDs, prescriptions. They said, quote, "In general, we find evidence that both recreational cannabis laws and medical cannabis laws decrease opioid prescribing," end quote, the authors reported. They continued, "Thus, the evidence presented here suggests that cannabis access laws could be a useful tool in combating the prescription opioid epidemic. While our data do not allow us to test this potential mechanism explicitly, our results are consistent with a substitution of cannabis for prescription opioids in the treatment of pain." The authors concluded, quote, "The evidence reported here presents the most accurate picture of the effects of cannabis access laws on prescription opioid use to date, and can therefore inform the ongoing state and national debates over the legality of cannabis, as well as other policy options to combat the opioid epidemic. While the results here do not suggest that cannabis access laws are the only tool to address prescription opioid use, they do suggest that cannabis access laws could play a meaningful role in addressing the opioid epidemic," end quote. These findings are consistent with those of other studies finding an association between legal cannabis access and declines in the use of opioids, sleep aids, benzodiazepines, and other controlled substances. This study, The Impact of Cannabis Access Laws on Opioid Prescribing, appears this month in the Journal of Health Economics. Our next story is out of San Diego, California, and this is our last hemp news story tonight. The topical administration of CBD oil is associated with reduced pain in patients with peripheral neuropathy, according to clinical trial data published in the journal Current Pharmaceutical Biotechnology. A team of investigators affiliated with Scripps Mercy Hospital in San Diego and Des Moines University in Iowa assessed the efficacy of topically delivered CBD oil in the management of neuropathic pain in a random placebo-controlled clinical trial. 29 patients participated in the study. Each patient received both treatment and placebo at various intervals of the 4-week trial. The authors reported, quote, there was a statistically significant reduction in intense pain, sharp pain, cold and itchy sensations in the CBD group when compared to the placebo group. No adverse events were reported in this study. The authors concluded, quote, our findings demonstrate that the transdermal application of CBD oil can achieve significant improvements in pain and other disturbing sensations in patients with peripheral neuropathy. The treatment product was well tolerated and may provide a more effective alternative to other current therapies in the treatment of peripheral neuropathy. The full text of this study, the effectiveness of cannabidiol oil in symptomatic relief of peripheral neuropathy in the lower extremities, appears in Current Pharmaceutical Biotechnology. That's the end of our Hemp News segment tonight. We'll be back in just a moment with Darlene Mia and John Sidlin. But first, we have Mr. John Sinclair. Ho, ho, ho. Happy holidays, John.
Love it.
Oh, did I say John Sinclair?
No,
okay.
no, you said John Cornette.
John Cornette.
No, you
John
told me-
Cornette.
no, you didn't say
Didn't
John.
another John, Lennon wrote a song about you. Oh, no, that's John
If he
Sinclair.
did, if he did, where's my royalties? Okay, here we go. You know, I was going to do a Christmas song tonight, but this right here is kind of one. I wrote it a long, long time ago. It's called Grand Opportunity. So we say we sympathize, though we may apologize for the poor, the lost, the lonesome, and the fool. Forgiving all the greedy deeds, what the world really needs. Teach compassion to the children in the school. And heaven help you and me. God help the refugee. Help our blinded eyes to see the grand opportunity we have to live in peace and harmony. Burdened with self-righteousness makes your life such a mess, never knowing if they really understood. Wrapped up in your philosophy, amazing how your eyes can see when the action that you're taking isn't good. Heaven help you and me. God help the refugee. Help our blinded eyes to see the grand opportunity we have to live in peace and harmony. Tomorrow I'll read the news, people and the lives they choose. All the dirty stories seem to linger on. And I see a single man doing the best he can, knowing oh so well that soon we'll all be gone. Heaven help you and me. God help the refugee. help our blinded eyes to see. Grand opportunity we have to live in peace and harmony. Thank you very much. Thank you. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Hey, it's good to see you, John Sidlin. It's great to have you here on the show again.
Thanks, Bob.
For the first time. And again, one more time, Darlene Mia,
So nice to be
Hempington Post and Cannabis Wire.
Right.
And what was the other?
The Compound.
The Compound. What is the Compound?
The Compound is going to be a software platform for medicine research, commerce, and manufacturing.
I see. Well, that's pretty exciting.
And we're still in a little bit on stealth mode, but if people want to see more about it, they can go to thecompound.io.
Uh-huh. I saw you at the Knox's medical
Symposium,
yeah,
right?
symposium, continuing medical education class on an introduction to the endocannabinoid system. I
Right.
thought it was a pretty good presentation.
Yeah.
So.
That figures very heavily into what we're doing at the Compound, too.
Good. Are you working with the Knoxes at all, or can you say, or?
Rachel's actually, Rachel Knox is on our board of advisors, and
Uh-huh.
we hope to be working with them in a couple of different ventures that they have.
Great. Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
And what about Canna Newswire?
Canna Newswire is a service that helps brands and other organizations that have news to connect with reporters in this very chaotic media landscape that's this state-by-state cannabis market. And so we have tools like a wire service where people can submit a free press release. We distribute that to reporters that opt in. There's a couple hundred reporters that are taking our fee. And we also produce events where we can bring businesses with news or organizations with news together directly with the reporters that are interested in that kind of news.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So, and Darlene, tell our audience about Hempington Post.
Okay.
You concentrate on industrial hemp or fuel fiber and food, or
No,
do you cover
we
more?
concentrate on hemp, so the world of hemp. So everything from wellness, politics, farming, industrial. So over these last couple of years, as you know, it's gone absolutely off the charts.
It has.
And yeah, and it's extremely exciting. So Hempington Post is a portal for all things hemp. And then we do product reviews on hemp products made in America, hopefully, mainly. John's been a great asset to me as I go along because he shoots great articles to me about hemp. But yeah, the world of hemp is exploding. As you know, you've been in it forever, and, I'm gracious for you and all that you do.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate your support.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think
We got to support each other.
I was just
you know,
going to say that we
yeah.
need to support each other because it's an insane world, the whole cannabis world, and it's very exciting. I mean, the accomplishments that we've made over the last 4 or 5 years have been extraordinary, I think, with marijuana and hemp. That Hempington Post, again, is really exciting because there's not an awareness enough on hemp. Still, when you ask people if they know what hemp is, they'll refer to rope, you know, right? Or I didn't smoke it, you know, or I don't. But it's a fabulous product, obviously, and it makes everything from the wellness area all the way through to hemp homes. And now there's a factory in Boulder, Colorado that has the hemp plastic, and they're building the largest plant in Lubbock, Texas, of where the decorticators are now there so they can process for the hemp industry. Because I think, as I always say, the CBD market has been this big thing about hemp, but that's only a small...
Kind of open with that.
It's kind of, yeah.
It's kind of strange. I didn't
Right.
anticipate that.
Yeah, well, it was because of that 3% law for the pharmaceuticals. That's why it opened into that, to kind of bring it back in. And I believe that it's kept it at the 3% for farmers because industrial hemp is such a huge market against the petrochemical industry, as you know, that they're slow. The government or the corporations don't know what to do with that. The competition is too strong for them. Plastic, paper, biofuel. I don't think they want that. So
No, that's why they prohibited it to start with. You know?
Right, exactly.
It was a Kentucky attorney, Gatewood Galbraith, who I first met back in the early 80s, who said that the people who brought us marijuana prohibition where the petrochemical, pharmaceutical, military, industrial, transnational, corporate elite, fascist sons of a bitches. So
Complex.
it's the biggest applause line in most of the speeches I give.
Yes.
But after
true.
Gatewood passed away, I couldn't let that phrase go with him. He also talked about how, you know, the prohibition of cannabis and hemp in particular was the synthetic people in the synthetic cycle with the petrochemical industry and these pharmaceuticals, what the late great Dr. Todd McRae called the monomolecular mercantile madness, that they're the ones who are opposing the natural cycle, and that hemp farmers and hemp fuel represent kind of a competition between the synthetic and the natural cycle. And we, I believe, have to go back to preserve more of our natural cycle.
Oh, totally. And with this whole climate change, it's really exciting. My granddaughter has been a rep for all of these climate demonstrations for the young people.
That's great. How old is your granddaughter?
She's 17.
All right.
Kyle Young,
I'm
yes.
so happy to see young kids out there. I hear a lot of angry old white men in social media attacking me for supporting Greta Thunberg,
Right.
the Swedish activist. I think she's great myself.
Absolutely.
But, you know, some people think she's a misguided person and insult her. But I think she's waking up the young people and getting the young people involved. And
Yes.
we need to see that happen more.
Right, and with her, I keep saying to her, it's like, what are they talking about? Solution? Is anyone talking hemp? Is anyone talking cannabis? That we should be growing it around the world. This should become a plant-based world, right?
I was happy to see Thunberg go to the South Dakota, to the Indian reservations there, and the site of the Standing Rock protests against the oil pipelines, and back up the indigenous community.
Absolutely.
Hemp is really exploding there in,
Yes.
in the Sioux or Lakota peoples' territories, and they're the poorest people in America.
Yeah.
So if anybody needs it, they do.
Right.
You know, they've suffered generations of murder and genocide and alcoholism. You know, they used to give 5/5 of whiskey to every Native American for 50 years. They come in and take their children and then give them 5/5 of whiskey. And that was their way of westernizing them.
See.
So
Well,
we're ignorant of most of this history,
I
you
know,
know?
I know.
And so that's one of the things we do here is try to educate people about this sort of thing.
Right. Well, education is what it's all about. And we're at the end of a decade. Are we
Yeah.
on the last show in the decade?
This is the last show of the 2010 decade.
Right.
And this has been a pretty exciting decade.
Hasn't it?
We have seen the legalization of marijuana now in 11 states. There's only 3 states left that don't have medical marijuana in some form,
Wow.
even if, like in Texas, just CBD. But don't you think that's exciting, John?
It's very exciting.
It's amazing. I mean,
Well, this is today's the anniversary, I think, of the Farm Bill. And so if you look at just what has happened in the last year in the United States, and in particular, some of this research I'm seeing that's coming out of hemp. Yesterday there was a story that came out that because of the cycle of hemp growth, there's been a resurgence of bees, honeybees, pollinators
Nice.
in the areas where hemp is growing. So that's interesting.
yeah, I've
There's-
seen
there's
some
use-
hemp honey that some people in Europe have been making for a while.
Hemp is also apparently putting out more oxygen than it's taking carbon dioxide out, so
Right.
it's much more efficient.
And we had a guest on, I don't know if you know Paul Van Hartman here a couple months ago, who talks about how the terpenes from cannabis, the cannabis transpires more terpenes than any other plant, and that these terpenes have a major effect on climate change as well.
Nice.
You know, we talk about climate change, and it's been about 15,000 years ago, the sea level was 400 feet below where it is today.
Wow.
And you go back about 2,500 years, and it was about 25 feet below where it is today. So global warming and climate change have been going on for at least 15,000 years since the end of the last ice age. And but it's been rapidly and exponentially accelerating with humans' exponential growth and consumption of all the world's land and pollution of the world's atmosphere.
And a synthetic world.
And a
Come on.
synthetic
I mean, and
world.
that's really what it is. It's
Yeah.
we could try and blame it on overpopulation. It's really, it's like we have way too many wars and we live in a synthetic world. It's
Yeah.
you know, we need to switch that around, and hopefully you know, with this young generation coming in, and then with everything that us older generation, because we've known this all along, right? And so now I think the culmination of the two, we might be able to survive ourselves.
I hope so. You know, we're living through right now, all scientists agree, the 6th major extinction event where the majority of species on the planet are being wiped out in the history of the Earth. And the last one was 60 million years ago. So some people try to say it's just a natural cycle. Well, it's not. It's not a natural cycle to wipe out 90% of the species on the planet.
Right.
You know, so
Those people are sick people.
well, they're misguided. They're misguided, and so it's our job to educate them, and that's what this show's about. And you know, this show has had quite an impact over its history of over 23 years now in terms of educating the public. Cable TV is not as popular as it used to be,
Nope.
but we still have a significant impact in terms of people around the globe who can tune into it, and we keep educating folks.
We have to. We have to. And do you think that cannabis, I mean, if cannabis becomes legal in the next, decade.
You mean federally in the United States?
As it should, right?
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
that would make everything
Yeah.
grow
Yeah.
even more exponentially.
I think it has to happen.
Just-
You know, it's
With 60% of the population, by, the election will be 70%. We, the people, will
It'll happen.
rule.
It'll happen.
yeah,
Will
and
it,
it is
John?
happening. We've got to change the composition of the United States Senate. That seems clear. The House Judiciary Committee passed a wonderful bill, the MORE Act, that would legalize cannabis, completely take it off the schedule of controlled substances, and even expunge people's federal criminal records, which would be good for me. I have a federal marijuana felony for 2 grams. That's if I'd been found guilty, I would have got of cultivation, which I was acquitted basically in a jury nullification case in December 1993. If I'd been found guilty, I would have gotten a 10-year mandatory
Oh my
minimum
gosh.
sentence.
Wow.
And,
For 2 grams.
Well,
And
for
cultivation.
cannabis growing in another location.
Right.
In the end, the jury wouldn't find me guilty of just the 2 grams in my pocket, even though my own lawyer argued that they should. That's an interesting story. I won't keep go. If
Who's that
people-
attorney?
Paul Penderson. He heads. He's a great guy, but he basically saved my life, along with the concept of jury nullification, because that's basically how it happened. The whole story's out there. If someone wants to read it, they can look up How Fija, F-I-J-A, saved my life. How Fija saved my life, and you can read it in more detail than I can go into right now.
Seems like your life has been saved a few times over the years of these crazy world of cannabis, right?
That's the life of
You
an
stand
activist,
for
yeah.
it, and everybody just
The
like
world has changed a
vultures.
lot in the past 10 years. You know, it was 10 years ago, people said, you're never going to see marijuana legal in our lifetime. You're wasting your
Right.
time. It's not going to happen.
Right.
And we got a whole new world now, and people's the public opinions have dramatically shifted. And so hopefully soon that'll change the dynamic and the composition of our representatives, and maybe the whole structure of our government. That's what we need to see, I think, before artificial intelligence becomes sentient and able to start improving itself. And that's probably going to happen, according to the futurists and scientists, in about 25 years. And at that point, when artificial intelligence starts improving its own design and people start merging with technology, we better have protected our right to freedom of thought, freedom of belief, and biodiversity and cultural diversity. Because obviously, there are some places on this planet where it's being wiped out. In fact, most places.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not going to be around 25 years from now.
Well, you never know.
I don't want.
They keep extending people's lives. Depends on what you want to do.
Well,
We are taking viewers' phone calls tonight. If you have a question or comment for any of us, you can call us there at 503-288-4442. That's 503-288-4442. So, John,
Yeah.
if someone wanted to contact you about Canna Newswire, where
Yeah.
would they go to?
CannonNewsWire.co.
.co.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And again, what sort of things would you want them to contact you about?
Well, if they have information that they want to get out broadly to the marketplace, they should come to us as a first stop, particularly the companies out there that are startups. They don't have a lot of money. They don't maybe have a PR agency. We're there to help them. Our services are free for those companies. And all the information about all our services are linked online too.
Okay. And the compound, how would they find out about that?
Thecompound.io.
Okay.
Here, the compound's on my lookout.
Oh, that looks like a molecular structure. Is that THC?
This one's THC.
Nice.
Okay.
There's several compounds that we're interested in. That's just
Okay.
one of them. Yeah.
Okay. Neat. I've never seen a lapel pin of CBD.
Jennifer
THC.
Murray. Jennifer, the plug for Jennifer Murray.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure she needs it.
Nice.
We have a number of videos that we're going to run tonight. I think this first one's with our good friend Jorge Cervantes, a tour of the Green Giants of California. So if they're ready to roll that in our control room, then that video will be starting here momentarily.
Boy, do I hope you're as ready as I am, because I'm gonna take you on a tour unlike anything you've ever seen. Today, we're gonna enter the world of outdoor gardening, deep in the California backcountry, where we will visit some of the most spectacular gardens I've ever been able to visit since I started writing about the cannabis industry almost 30 years ago. These gardens aren't just incredible, they're medical. All certified and regulated under California state law to provide medicine to medicinal dispensaries. Now, because of the way medical cannabis laws are written in California, growers are forced to adapt their practices. This includes not only growing as many plants as the law allows, but growing them to huge proportions. And one of the things we'll see is by using just a few simple techniques, it's possible not only to grow huge plants, but beautiful buds and potent medicine at the same time. So sit back and enjoy the view as we begin our journey to the Green Giants of California. I'm here in Northern California in this beautiful cannabis garden, medicinal cannabis garden, that's full of a cornucopia of strains. Let's go on a tour and you'll see what I mean. Here we are at a medical marijuana grower's house. This is actually the bedroom window. And let's take a look out and see what it looks like. Well, there's the garden. Incredible. These plants are 10 to 12 feet tall. It's amazing. I can't believe these things. They're huge. And I'll tell you, you can grow plants just like this. These things are in 200-gallon containers. The average they're getting is 10 gallons of water a day. And the nutrients in here are all mixed early on. But they can mix more nutrients and inject them into the fertilization system. Let's go see how they do that. That's actually pretty interesting. Boy, it's a little while to get over there, Man, look at this. These plants are huge. This blue dream has really come on nicely. I can't believe it. This is a lower bud. Huh? They're everywhere. Well, over here, we can hear the dosatron. I love these dosatrons. They're really cool. They're easy to use, very easy to use.
If you can afford one, you should use it. So anyway, we're back with John Sidlin and Darlene Mia. And John, you just got back from the MJ Business Con, which is the biggest cannabis business conference in the United States. I went to it a couple of years ago, and they had 650 booths and 22,000 people. They must have grown since then.
Oh my gosh, yes. Right now they are occupying what is the main hall of where the Consumer Electronics Show.
The Las Vegas Convention Center, which is one of the biggest in the country.
So I think it's roughly between last year and this year they doubled the floor space on their exhibit floor. And there was a lot of hemp on the floor. There was some very interesting exhibits. They actually had manufacturing taking place on the floor. So they had.
So when you say manufacturing, you mean
equipment,
cannabis?
equipment vendors that would set up the whole
Cannabis processing.
Yeah.
So they were making extracts there on the floor.
They weren't doing extracts, but what they were doing, there was one company there that they were taking just hemp and throwing it into this machine. It would pull out all the stalks and everything.
Oh,
and
a trimming machine.
And then eventually it was spitting out pre-rolls on the other side.
Spitting out pre-rolls.
And they had thousands of these pre-rolls, and they were just throwing them at the passers-by that were coming by. I think there was...
These weren't THC pre-rolled
No, they were
cigarettes.
hemp.
They were hemp.
Yeah. And I have no idea what the COA says about what was in it. But but I do know that as I walked past, somebody threw a bunch of stuff in my bag. I had over 25 of these pre-rolls that just flew into my bag as I walked past.
It's amazing.
Did you
They weren't
smoke
doing
one?
that 2 years ago.
You ever smoked
Did you
one?
smoke one?
Yeah, there was a funny story. We were outside smoking what we thought was THC and got through it and went, what? That's terrible. What happened? Figured out what was going on. So yes, the short answer is yes, I did have one. And my associates all said that they were feeling really great after being there for 4 days because they were using a lot more CBD than they normally had, and they had a noticeable effect to them.
Nice.
Yeah.
And Darlene, you want our audience to know that they don't have to buy CBD. You want to give them, our audience, you, this little Christmas present or Hanukkah present or Kwanzaa present.
Or holiday
Whatever
present.
belief you want.
Or-
Solstice. It's solstice.
Yes, because I think that when you have a full spectrum from hemp, you get the full cannabinoid effect, right? And our body maybe doesn't want just CBD, and I figured that out because of now there's CBGs,
CBG, CBN.
right? There's all, and so it was
THCA.
like, right? So then,
THC Delta 2.
thank you. So then it's like, what is the point of just buying a CBD if we could have full spectrum? And so what I discovered over the last couple of months is there are organic hemp farms, probably all over the country, but we discovered it was your farms here. And we went up and we bought a couple of pounds of this hemp flour and put it in our crock pot with some organic coconut oil and cooked it for 24 hours, a little over 24 hours, and made amazing full spectrum hemp that you can just eat. And you get this amazing, wonderful entourage effect.
You know, that entourage effect is what works with the full extract cannabis oil for cancer patients and people with neurodegenerative diseases, and it works so well to cause cancer cells to kill themselves.
Exactly. So I'm believing that it's the cannabinoid that runs through whether it's hemp or marijuana, right? I think the marijuana has maybe the THC side that relaxes you a little bit more. I'm not sure. But what I have figured out is why not spend, we got this for actually $32 a pound. for hemp flower. So for $100, we have enough for the entire year of a full spectrum. So and it's so easy. You can.
So how much cannabis do you put into your crock pot?
Well, actually, so we bought 3 pounds. We ground it up, and we put that, and that fit in the crock pot. And then we put about a cup and a half per pound of coconut oil, and just put it in there and put it on really super low. And there's directions on, I mean, you can get it anywhere. We got it from Azure Farms. And this is a Mormon family that has been doing organic produce for the last 40 years, and they just decided to start growing hemp. And so they made it available to everyone to come out and buy, or they would send it to them.
So they probably thought $32 a pound was a great price for if they're really used to being
Right.
farmers.
Right.
Where so many people who have the green rush mentality think, oh, we're got to get $2,000 a pound for this stuff,
Right.
and then they find out they can't sell it for $200, and their whole business model is ruined.
This
But
is true.
real organic farmers know that those sorts of artificial bubble prices aren't going to last for long. One of the first big economic bubbles was the tulip market in the Netherlands back about 300 years ago. And at some point, a single tulip was worth more than a pound of gold, depending on the variety.
Seriously.
But when that burst, a lot of people lost their shirt. So that's happened. We've seen a lot of farmers here in Oregon in particular that weren't prepared to harvest their crop. They say over 60% of the crop in Jackson County has gone to mold and rot. And they had more people growing cannabis in Jackson County, Oregon. For our out of Oregon viewers, that is, better straighten that. But, that is a southern Oregon county right on the California border. And they had more people growing hemp this year than they had growing what had been for more than a generation the next 2 largest crops, grapes and pears.
Wow.
And so more people were growing hemp, both in number of farmers and in land cultivated. It was actually 2 to 1.
Wow.
And
You think we get a Harry David's hemp box?
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming. Maybe you can get it $32 a pound. I don't know. I
Right,
heard
that
they've
was
had
pretty
some economic
outrageous.
problems. Harry and David being a big pear fruit brand there in the Rogue River Valley.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about them.
Well,
Don't know what
okay.
to
Somebody get her a
say.
box.
Yeah.
Somebody get a
Yes,
box.
yes.
Before they're gone.
Send me a box.
It's Christmas.
Yeah, well, I think that the CBD industry, for those people that don't know about it, it's spooky because there's so many brands and there's so many, you don't know what to do. And people are calling me all the time from everywhere going, I don't know how to choose a CBD brand. I just don't, it's like they can't try each and every one of them. So now when they're talking to me, and even in Hempington Post, I'm referring to them to make your own. It's so much easier.
If somebody wants to look at Hempington Post, where do they go?
Where do they go?
Yeah.
HempingtonPost.com?
HempingtonPost.com.
Yeah,
So it's
that's-
kind of like the Ariana Huffington thing. You were kind of playing off that to get the Hempington, I guess.
I guess. It came to me and I'm like, well, that's just perfect. I'm going with that. And that was maybe 4 years ago. But yes, if they go to Hempington Post, there's, it's wellness and, again, farming and politics and industry and culture. So I think this is under wellness, and there it talks about you can make your own. And so it talks about Azure Farms. And again, I would highly recommend organic. Obviously.
That's what I do.
Obviously, yes. And I would imagine you could do the same thing with marijuana. And
Yeah,
I
you
certainly
can,
would.
I can
You
tell.
can, yes.
Been
Tell me
just
that.
doing organic marijuana since 1984 here in Oregon.
Yes, and you have beautiful marijuana, I remember.
Thank you. Thank
Yes,
you.
yes.
We are going to run a little video here. This is our another one of our mentors who started seeing medical marijuana patients right in this studio in May of 1999.
Wow.
When medical marijuana first became legal, and that's Dr. Philip Levesque. This is a video from June of 2012, and we'll be right back after a short clip from this.
Time I heard about it, he had died, and so
It happened very quick.
Every marijuana user in the United States owes a debt to Todd McAree, which can never be repaid in any manner, shape, or form. He was
really
the
pioneered
he was the #1 guy.
Humble,
It's true.
nice,
Yep.
conscientious,
Yep.
courteous,
And
friendly.
incredibly intelligent,
Very.
and he called the whole pharmaceutical industry the monomolecular mercantile madness. That's what he called it. And he knew that cannabis could take care of many of those things. If you have a question or comment for us tonight, we got about 15 minutes to go. You can call us at 503-288-4448. That's 503-288.
I have a question for
44,
Dr. Lebec.
Yes.
Go ahead.
During World War II, did any of the troops smoke this remarkable herb like they did? You know, Vietnam, it was pretty much out in the field, wink, wink. Whereas in World War II, did you all know about it? This wacky weed?
No, not really. But the whole thing it is that we had morphine, styrets, all the medics stuff, and the dog faces discovered the morphine, styrets, and so that's what they were using. So at the end of the war, we had a whole bunch of morphine addicts and so forth. But I don't think, from the guys from Texas and the South and so forth, they probably had their marijuana, but most of us.
Now, you got your PhD from the University of Oregon Medical School, which
Yes.
is now known as Oregon Health Sciences University.
That's right, yes.
And while you were there, I know you told me the story about finding huge gallon jars of cannabis in the cupboard.
Yes. When I started as a grad student at the medical school, Dr. David, the chairman of pharmacology, says, Lebec, I'd like you to go in and straighten out the stockroom, whatever, just straighten it out. And the first thing I found was a gallon jug of cannabis cough medicine. And at that time, it was illegal for cannabis of any sort to be anywhere. And this was 13 years after 1937 or so, something like that.
Yeah. About 1950.
And it was manufactured by Park Davis.
Uh-huh.
And so I said, well, if Park Davis paid me to go to medical school. So I just said, if Park Davis says this stuff is good for cough medicine, it must be good. So I poured myself a pint of it like this. And it's probably out in my barn someplace, and it's probably still good.
All right. All right. That's a great story. This is an Eli Lilly container. We're going to do our little show and tell here.
Well, as long as you've been around, I figured you got high with Lincoln first. When did you first get high?
He didn't get high.
I don't use it.
You don't even use it?
No.
And you know how wonderful this is?
If it was known that I used marijuana, every cop in the state of Oregon would be looking for me.
Oh.
They're after me instead. We have a phone call. Welcome to our show, caller. Oh, we don't have a phone call. Okay, that is Dr. Philip Levesque, great friend and mentor, co-host of this show from about show number 80 till about show 350. And he first started seeing patients right here in this studio as people just came pouring in before the show and after to get their first medical marijuana recommendation. So it's good to flash back to that.
Absolutely.
Well, Darlene, it was about last spring, just before the Oregon Hemp Convention, when you told the people who put that on, and it's now Kush.com,
Yes.
that they should get me on.
Yes.
And at the very last minute, I got on to a couple panels,
Yes.
and I appreciate that.
My
It's
pleasure.
good go doing that. I don't know what you said to them.
I said to them, do you have Paul Sanford on? Well, and they're like, well, no, should we? Absolutely. Absolutely, you should, yes.
Well, this summer I went up and met with them in Seattle, where they're based, and they asked me if I would be a keynote presenter at their Texas Hemp Convention.
Oh, nice.
And I actually grew up in Dallas, Texas, and I still have family there. And so I'm going to go there January 28th, 29th, and 30th.
Very good.
I'm one of the two keynotes. As Texas State Senator is the other one.
Ooh.
And I on the 28th, which is a Tuesday, the last hour at 4 o'clock, I'll present about hemp biodiesel. Nice. On the 29th, which is a Wednesday, at 4 o'clock, I'll present my favorite presentation, the evolution of cannabis, the first 25,000 years. And then on in November, I gave that lecture 3 times, twice in Mexico and once in Colombia, in 12 days. But
wow.
I keep making it better and better. I got to do this. But then on Thursday, their last day, the 30th, I'm on a panel with Morris Beagle, who is
Morris.
you know who
Yeah,
he
of
is,
course,
the organizer of the NOCO Hemp
NOCO,
Conference,
yeah,
and
great
he's
conference.
got several hemp companies,
Yeah, he's
making hemp guitars, hemp paper.
he's all over it, Morris
He
is.
is.
Yes,
I do a
he
lot of
is.
other conferences. So I actually, just shortly after that one, went to the NOCO for the first time in think it was the end of March, 1st of,
This past year?
yeah, this,
Oh,
this next April. So excited to go back. I
Great
opened,
conference, right?
yeah, I opened
Super.
up my offices in Colorado in 2005. And between 2005 and 2008, we were really the only cannabis business advertising across the state of Colorado. But I'll quit bragging.
You're ahead of your time, Paul. So you're leading the way.
You know, that's what Kate Brown told me. I
true.
worked as an aide for Senator Kate Brown during her first first term in the Senate, and she told me I was ahead of my time too back then.
It's true.
Okay.
Thank goodness.
We are down to just about 2 minutes. So, John, again, how can people reach you if they want to find out about Canna Newswire and the Compound?
Canna Newswire, people can go to www.cannanewswire.co, and the Compound can be found at thecompound.io.
Is there anything else you want to say in closing?
This past year was all about CBD in the medical side of the hemp market, which is where I'm going to be living. But there's so much we don't know, and there's so much really fascinating manufacturing advances and things. When people are asking Darlene where to go to get CBD, go to dispensary. Don't go and buy it off the shelves. It's some of that stuff is 70.
I was in Fred Meyer the other day.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a big sign that says CBD products. You know, Fred Meyer is owned by Kroger and the merger capitalist vulture firm KKR, Kohlberg, Kravitz, and R. But it's amazing to see that.
Yes.
It's at your
Fred Meyer.
favorite gas station.
Yeah,
Don't-
everywhere.
Gas station CBD is as good as gas station sushi. Stay away.
Good point. Darlene, we've only got a few seconds left. HempingtonPost.com.
HempingtonPost.com, yes, and it's great to close out this decade
Yeah,
with you.
this has been
both
a-
of you, and I want to thank you so much. John has been an extreme help to me. He's just the greatest giving guy
Thank
in
you,
this
John.
industry, and you have
Thank
been
you, Darlene.
fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks,
You've
Paul.
been helping
Thank you,
me stay in
viewers.
the business.
Well, I'm glad we can help. Mr. John Cornett's going to take us out. We'll have a tape show next week, and then we'll be back with some shows in January next year. Restore hemp. Good night.
Yes.
Just one big family over here.